This is WhyBeAre with BeamNG.drive, and today we're going to be taking a look at a mod called the LUNAR LANDER. And one of the neat things included with this mod is a scenario called moon landing, in which you land the LUNAR LANDER on the moon. So we're going to start with that, and after we complete that, we'll mess around with it in a little bit more detail. And usually when you load up the scenario, things aren't working right. Gravity is way too strong and going in the wrong direction, and it's just complete chaos on your screen. So how do you fix it? Just hit reset, then it works fine. Just a weird quirk about BeamNG.drive. But there is one more thing we need to do to make gravity work the way it's supposed to, because the moon still is not actually pulling like a celestial body should. To make the gravity on the moon realistic, there is a console command listed on the download page for the LUNAR LANDER. So we open up the console with tilde, and we want to make sure we're in the BeamNG vehicle Lua section, and we'll paste the console command, hit enter, and now the gravity of the moon should be realistic, although the Earth down there, that one still doesn't do anything. And as you can see, the LUNAR LANDER is now being pulled towards the moon as it slowly floats towards it. But I don't want to be starting wherever we are right now. I want to start in the correct location, so we're going to reset this. That way I know I'm starting in the correct location. And before we do any real serious flight, I want to talk about the controls. First off, to control the pitch and the roll, you have the arrow keys. So if you hit the up arrow key, you're going to pitch forward. And then if you hit the down arrow key, you're going to pitch backwards. You're slowly seeing happen right now. Then if we hit the left arrow key, we will roll to the left, which works great at the start when you know which direction is which. But what happens after you've been spinning around for a while and you don't know which direction is which? Because this happened to me a few times. I'd be flying this thing, I would get into a spin like this, and I'd be hitting left. I'm like, why is it not slowing down? Because it's actually speeding up, because what I thought was left is actually right. So I needed to figure out a way to always know which is the front of the vehicle, and thankfully there is a very easy way to identify the front. The front is the part that has the ladder. It's also the part with the tallest dish. So you can look at either the top or the bottom of the vehicle. It's funny calling it a vehicle, but I guess it's technically a vehicle, right? But you can look at the top or the bottom, figure out which way it's oriented. So let's go ahead and kind of demonstrate that. We're spinning out of control right now. It's like, okay, which way are we spinning? We're spinning towards the left. So then if we hit the right, that should reduce the spinning and eventually it'll stabilize the vehicle, correct? Yeah, see? You just gotta know which orientation is which, because there are a lot of times where I would hit the wrong direction and then I would wreck myself because of that while trying to land this thing. Most of the time when I do a scenario, mind you, I go into those blind, but this is one of those ones where I needed some practice first off to really get a feel for it. Now, in addition to that, you also have yaw controls with F and 8, which actually you can kind of get around not using for the most part, but yeah, if you want to have more control over the vehicle, you can do it. What I found happens is I try to use the yaw control, and it's just another way for me to spin out of control. Every control you give me is basically just another way for me to spin out of control, it seems like. And then we have the throttle. Now, there are two ways to control the throttle. We have the ability to use T and G to slowly increase and decrease the throttle. But for me, I didn't really use that too well because it was hard for me to know how much throttle I'm actually giving it. So we also have Z and X. When you hit X, it does full throttle. When you hit Z, it does no throttle. And for me, that was a little bit easier to use. It makes actually landing it smoothly a little bit more difficult, but it just makes it easier to know how much throttle you're actually giving it. And by the way, we're not going to land this. So instead, we're just going to smash into the moon. Unfortunately, you can't really see the collision because of the screen up above us, but don't worry, you'll be seeing a lot of crashing very, very soon. But now, let's go ahead and try to do a successful landing. And I want to land this thing as fast as possible. So what's the fastest way to do it? First off, you charge directly at the moon like a complete lunatic. And now that I think about it, lunatic really is a great word for this, because I'm pretty sure the origin of the word is something along the lines of insanity caused by the moon. So anyways, once we get closer to the moon, we're going to go ahead and thrust in the opposite direction and try to slow this thing down. Now, we do have a speed counter in the bottom left corner of the screen. That is very, very useful, because sometimes it's hard to figure out what your velocity is just by looking at everything around you, because the camera's focused on the LUNAR LANDER, and the only point of reference you have is literally the size of a planet. That doesn't mean the moon is a planet, because I'm pretty sure it doesn't fit the definition of the word planet, but it's just you have planets that are smaller than the moon, like Pluto was a planet, and I'm almost certain it's a good bit smaller than the moon, and then Mercury is only a little bit bigger. But back to what I'm actually doing in the game. So I'm kind of saying, okay, which direction was I flying? And then I put the thrust in the opposite direction and try to make this thing go as slow as possible, now down to about 10 miles per hour at times. And now we get really close to the planet to figure out which direction our velocity is, and it looks like it's to the left and a little bit forward. So I'm gonna tilt the vehicle in the opposite of that direction, give it some thrust, try to make it as stable as possible above the planet. And I don't know what's going on with this camera. Oh my goodness. That was not a very smooth landing, but I really couldn't do anything because the camera was inverting itself and I had no idea what was going on. It does at least say that we landed successfully, so I'll consider that a success. And now I want to try to smash into the moon as hard as you can while still succeeding the scenario. Because if you smash into it, but not smash into it, it'll actually give you some different text than just you landed successfully. So my goal here is to actually do a bad landing. That's so wrong, but it's the only way to give you guys an idea of how lenient the scenario is and then also show you the alternative text. So we're going 87 miles per hour. That's way too fast. That is going to cause some issues, and I actually rolled the wrong direction right there. You saw I was not paying attention to where the ladder was, so now I got to do a complete roll almost to get to the direction I want, and we can slow this thing down. So it's now down to about 70 miles per hour. Still too fast, but we're going towards the moon. So if I thrust here, this is going to drop a ton of speed. We're now really slowing down. That was amazing how well I slowed that thing down. It like it stopped on a dime almost. And right now we're going about 20 miles per hour, which would usually be too fast for this to work. But most of the speed is going along the moon. So the actual collision into the moon is pretty light. And we're just going to roll along the moon's surface until it comes to a stop. And I think we got enough damage. The only question is, will it come to a stop without being too damaged as we lose yet another one of our dishes? And there goes another one. We are just losing parts all over the place, but thankfully these are NASA astronauts. They can put it back together if needed. So that looked pretty good. So it's a success, and it also says, hey there, those landing struts weren't made for that kind of punishment. So I thought it was kind of funny. Yeah, the first time I tried to land, I got that text. That's how I knew it existed. Now we're going to head over to the actual moon map, and then we're going to do some testing there. And once again, the first thing we need to do is copy and paste that console command, because as you can see right now, the truck is just floating away into nothingness because there is currently no gravity on the map. So we go ahead and paste it, and then the truck will go onto the moon just as you would expect it to. You can even drive around with it a little bit and see what it's like to drive on the moon, because this is part of the mod. The moon map comes with the lunar lander, so it's definitely worth driving around in. It is a lot of fun just seeing the truck fly like that, have a surprisingly smooth landing, and then unfortunately flip out of control. At this point, we're just going to see how badly it crashes unless I can get lucky, which I almost did. I landed on my wheels, but we just kind of kept rolling and rolling. Thankfully, though, with gravity this low, we don't actually get that badly damaged even when we're rolling along. Like, okay, is there any visible damage to the truck after that? Oh no, the bumper and the fender are slightly bent. I almost tried to combine those words. Did you hear me almost say bender? Yeah, the bender is bent. It's a combination of bumper and fender. Look it up. It's in the dictionary. You would think bender would be something that bends, but you're wrong. My definition is correct, and don't you dare question me. Anyways, driving on the moon some more with this vehicle still, and it's still working fine. Another harsh-ish landing. Can we get lucky once again? No, we are not getting lucky. Instead, we're going to flop all over the place in that slow, overly dramatic fashion. Like, oh no, I'm flipping over. Somebody stop me. And then it just keeps flipping, and then somehow lands on its wheels. And it didn't even have that much damage. So let's go ahead and try driving a few more different vehicles around on the moon. And then we're going to go ahead and try the actual lunar lander here. And you'll notice every time you change vehicles, you got to do the console command again. It does not save the gravity. One of the interesting things about that, though, is you could actually have two vehicles that use different gravity. So I could be driving around on the moon with Earth gravity, for example, which we're going to be trying out later on. And then the lunar lander has moon gravity, so you can have like a crash. That'll be really interesting because we can use the Earth gravity to get up to a high speed. And then when we crash in the lunar lander, it'll fly away just like you actually crashed into it on the moon. So what are you going to do, Giant T-Series, with all of your weights? Are you going to land on your wheels? I have a feeling it's a no. T-Series is stuck on its side. I just wanted to see if you had something really big and really heavy, how well it would drive, and the answer is surprisingly well. What if we had something with some downforce, though? Will that make it easier to hopefully not flip over? Because the gravity is so low, it's just really easy to hit a bump a little bit awkwardly and you just flip over. So maybe with all this extra downforce, it won't do that. Like, it stays a little bit more level, and we're good. And it is doing an amazing wheelie. This is a wheelie machine on the moon. That is amazing. At least until it hits a bump, but then it just keeps on doing it. There you go, just no steering at all, unfortunately, in this situation, because I don't have my front wheels on the ground. And up, we lost all the downforce. Now we are spinning out of control. Like the second the wing fell off, we were done. I don't even know how many times we just flipped there. It was at least a dozen. Is it gonna land on its wheels? The answer is, oh, maybe? No, it is unfortunately no. We're not gonna land on our wheels. So let's go ahead and try one more thing. We're gonna try driving around with the custom version of the Bishu Hopper, but we're gonna do it in about Earth gravity. Now I gotta give credit where credit's due. There was a comment on the download page for the Lunar Lander that mentioned that you could change the gravity to have it where it's easy to drive around on. So thank you for that comment, and that's allowing us to drive around here. Now I'm using the gravity of Earth for this, but it does feel a little bit stronger than it does on the actual planet Earth, and I think that might just be down to the size of the moon. Like to get Earth-like gravity, you might have to do some calculations based on the size of the celestial body and all that. But I didn't feel like looking that up. Instead, I just like, yeah, this is good enough. We're able to drive around relatively easily. Like we're not rolling all over the place. When we kind of bounce around, gravity is strong enough to keep us on all of our four wheels at the end of things most of the time. I mean, sure, we can still flip it over if I get reckless, but I'm trying not to flip it over for the most part. But let's change that. We're just gonna floor it. That's it. We're gonna floor it and see how well it holds up. That means no steering at all, and we're gonna hit this at a bad angle. We are flipping. Oh, we are not. Yes, we are. I tried to steer a little bit to make it not flip, and I think I just made it worse. That was great. And it's funny, as we're driving, it feels like we're driving downhill, but that's just the curve of the moon. And you're probably out there thinking, WhyBeAre, how can you be driving on the curve of the moon when the moon is flat? You know, video games, they just allow you to do things that aren't possible, like driving a regular car on the moon. Now let's go ahead and take a break from driving cars on the moon and play with the Lunar Lander on the moon. So we'll spawn that thing up. And once again, we got to do the gravity modification to make things as realistic as possible. So there are a couple of more controls I did not mention when we were doing this scenario. One of them is the ability to extend and retract the legs with P. So you can see the legs go up and then the legs go down. Well, they extend and they retract. I never used it in the scenario though, because there was no real reason to retract the legs only to extend them like a minute later, you know? But if you're actually flying through space, well, yeah, we'll go ahead and retract the legs. Why not? We also have the ability to do a stage separation. So this is not all one unit. These are actually two separate units. We have the landing piece, and then we have the stage above it. So if you hit spacebar, you see it kind of shifted a little bit. That just disconnected it, and you can see, yeah, this piece can now fly on its own. And it's actually a little bit harder to fly just this piece because we don't have the points of reference. The problem was is when I was flying it, I was really heavily relying on where the ladder was. Without having the ladder, I have to pay really close attention to see where we're going and which direction we're going to be clicking and all that. But it is definitely flyable, but you know what else we can do? We could slam it into the moon and see what happens to it. And it's kind of fun smashing into the moon because you got all these pieces that fly off and they bounce all over the place. And the thing itself also bounces all over the place because gravity is so low. Like you don't really have harsh crashes. You have these bouncing, rolling crashes, which to me are a lot of fun to watch just because so much stuff is happening. You don't even need to use slow-mo because it is already kind of like it's in slow-mo. It's really cool. And if you're wondering just how many things can actually come off this, like these pieces here, well, let's find out. I haven't really done that much testing. So can this piece come off? The answer is no, but I'm pretty sure that satellite dish that was still on top can come off, or it just did come off. It just did come off. So probably anything that can come off has, but just in case, we can go ahead and make sure that's the case by just breaking anything that can break. And yeah, so the pieces that come off are mostly like the satellite dishes and stuff. How about on the main stage, wherever we left that thing? Over here, did anything break on that? No, that thing looks like it all held together pretty well. Hey, look at the ladder is bent. Is it actually like that from the start, or is that from something I did? Let's see. Oh no, that's the shape of the ladder. Interesting. Like that's one of those things where I have to assume that's what the real lunar lander looks like as well. And it is absolutely crazy that the author was able to notice that slight bend in the ladder and was able to implement it, because that is such a small, minute detail. And wait, what's going on? Look at that. You can actually see the moon in the reflection. It looks kind of cool and almost like a fractal or something. It kind of looks like. That's neat. Anyways, I think it's time now we smash a car into this. Although, could we get it in a better position? Like, you see how harsh the shadows are right here? I want to try to put it like right on the bright part of the moon so we don't have the shadows being super harsh on one side where you can't even see it. So let's see if we put it over here. How's that look? It's a little bit better. We can still go towards the light some more. See what it does over here. How's that look? All right, that's good enough, I think. Oh, I have a weird idea. What happens when you do the reset? Because normally when you reset something, it can make itself upright. But now since we don't have an up and down, I guess it would actually make it upside down based on whichever way the map is designed for. So we don't want to mess with that actually. And apparently when you teleport something, that also removes the gravity on it. So we'll go ahead and apply that once more. Harsh landing, that's fine. But now there's no shadows really, or at least not as bad. Like before, it was just, this whole side was super, super dark. Now you can still see the details on it. So what do we want to crash in this? How about a big fat truck? We're going to go with the D35? No. Chief Rancher. I was going to do the Beast, but man, it's one of those things where I love the Beast, but I use him way too much. Oh, that looks weird with the blue and red. It's trying to be like the American truck. We just need white too, and then it's red, white, and blue. Now, so for gravity on this thing, I'm just going to put it to 9. Let's see what that feels like. It's quite a bit lower than what Earth really is, but it might feel okay. All right, yeah, we can accelerate fine. That's good. Going over the bumps. That seems fine. All right, that'll work. Now I just need to put a little bit of distance between me and the lunar lander. And I know we're not going to be able to go that fast just because the moon is so bumpy. But hopefully we'll be able to go at least 30 miles per hour before impact, and that should be about far enough as the truck kind of spins around all on its own. Oh no! It's actually stuck! You're not supposed to do that, truck. All right, we'll just move it back a few feet, and that should be fine. Get a fresh truck, and oh, it's starting to fly away. We'll do the gravity thing again. Gotta change it real quick to 9, and then we should be good to hit the lunar lander, wherever that is. I don't actually know exactly where it is anymore. I kind of got spun around when the truck spun around. I think it's somewhere in this direction though, ain't it? All right, there it is. Just off in the distance, you see this kind of grayish gray that's not moon gray. Yeah, that's the lunar lander. So here we go. We're gonna hit it at a good speed, about 45 to 50 miles per hour it looks like. Don't trust the speedometer exactly because we're bouncing all over the place, so I know it's not perfectly accurate. But we got a nice impact on it. A little bit of damage to the truck, and it is flying around. I like the fact that when we slam into it, it kind of just bounces all over the place because it is just using the moon gravity on it. That's actually really, really cool. That's something I really wasn't sure what would happen, but yeah, we could push the lunar lander around with the truck, no problem. I actually do not know how much the lunar lander weighs compared to the truck. We need to do some testing eventually in irregular gravity so you can have a fair fight, but right now it is just fun shoving it around and watching every now and then another dish flies off, although I think all of them might have fallen off by now, so it might be time to reset both of these guys and try something else. So on that first crash, I hit it real near the base. This time I want to kind of slam into the top part of it, and I do have a plan for this. We're going to drive towards the lunar lander just like we did before, and right before we hit it, we're going to enable moon gravity, which will hopefully pop us into the air a little bit more, and then we'll be able to hit the top part. So freeze physics, and then console command for moon gravity is this one, and let's see if it worked. That is pretty good. It's not going to overshoot it, right? No, it's going to hit it nice and solidly. And it is actually pretty solid. Now that we have kind of a fair fight, you can see it holds up surprisingly well. But again, gravity is so low that when you hit it, it is going to tip over. It's just the way gravity is at the moment. I don't know why, but it's just fun watching it tip over ever so slowly. It's just so overly dramatic. Like, I'm tipping over. Somebody help. Although, even driving the truck is so dramatic. Like, look, I'm flying through the air. Oh no, we're rolling, and I'm done rolling because, ow, I want to do some real good testing at grid map. And the testing here is going to be pretty simple. We get the lunar lander, we slam cars into it, and see what happens. The first test, we're going to go ahead and put it in front of the ramp over there. That way we can fly a car into it and hopefully cause the most interesting crash possible. So we'll just use the pickup truck here. This thing should be able to get to about 60 miles per hour before it hits the ramp. So it should be going more than fast enough to cause some good damage to it. We'll even use some slow-mo here, about 8 times slow-mo going into the air and then smashing right into it. I love the pieces that fall off. Like you smash into it and then boom, there goes one of the pieces falling off. Although there's still quite a few pieces still attached after that impact. All right, speed things up. How's the truck gonna do? It's gonna roll over. How is the lunar lander gonna do? It looks pretty bashed up. And the thing is when you're on Earth gravity, it can't do anything. I know before I was flying it all over the place just fine, right? Yeah, but that was in moon gravity. I'm hitting to go thrust right now and stuff, and it doesn't really do anything. It hops a little bit. You can kind of hop it a little bit. That's it. Because it just doesn't have the power to use the thrusters on Earth. It only has enough power to use them on the moon. All right, here's another idea. What if we just hit one of the legs like we're trying to trip a lunar lander? Does that work? Let's find out. Ooh, those legs are pretty strong, but we tripped it. We tripped it and it fell right into its face. It actually worked. When I first saw the impact, I did not think it was gonna work. And it really likes to roll around a lot. I guess it's kind of top heavy. Maybe just a little top heavy, but you know, when you're on the moon, maybe it's not as easy to notice how top heavy it is. But when you're in the Earth gravity, it's like, whoa, that's really top heavy. I'm gonna tip over all the time. At least that's what it seems like. Let's test this theory. We'll go ahead and crash into the lunar lander one more time, but we'll do it at a different angle and see if it gives us a different result. So I'm gonna do a big sweeping motion. I'm gonna smash right into it this time. I'm not gonna just try to trip it by the leg. I'm gonna just go bang right into it. And what's gonna happen? Ah, there we go. It's actually staying upright this time. So it's not that top heavy. It's just if you trip it, it's gonna fall onto its face. We could also try to retract the legs after it's damaged and see if anything interesting happens. Let's see here. Ooh, it kind of works somehow. Oh, it's gonna tip. It's gonna tip. Oh, I thought it was gonna tip for sure. It's so close. I bet if we smack it with the truck one more time, we could definitely get it to tip. I'm gonna hit it right at the top, hopefully. So I'm gonna take the medium ramp and see if this works. So here we go, 60 miles per hour, just like before, flying and tip that thing. Why is it so fun to tip it over? I don't know, but it just is. And then if we get crushed by it, will it do some damage? That's the next thing to test. So let's do the lunar lander's revenge on the truck that's been beating it up, hopefully. Let's get it teleported above the truck and let it do a drop. So from about there, not very high drop. But the lunar lander is pretty heavy, so I'm assuming even though it's not from that high of a height, it should do a decent amount of damage. We got 8 times slow-mo going. And yes, it does do a decent amount of damage. And you can actually see, I guess you could almost call it the suspension of the lunar lander taking the impact as well. That was pretty cool. And just for fun, I was trying to drive right now. Unfortunately, we are completely stationary, but I'm sure if we had a bigger truck, we could carry this thing around. So how about we get the dump bed upfit version of the T75, and it is a little bit bigger than the truck, but it'll still fit okay, I think. That worked great. Can you imagine if this was the official means of transportation for a lunar lander? You just get a truck, and not just any truck, a dump truck, and you stick it in the back, and yep, we're transporting the lunar lander now, our, you know, million upon millions of dollars of equipment and research, just all onto a dump truck. That's fine. Ooh, can we hit the top of it? Come on, let's go. Ooh, well, we lost a few of the parts on the top, but it is holding up surprisingly well. I was wondering if the top half and bottom half would separate, but it does not seem that was going to happen. So now we'll go ahead and take a look at the damage here, and it is pretty damaged up. What'll happen if we try to extend the legs? It kind of does a little dance for me. Okay. And it is kind of impressive just how well the lunar lander fit in the back of this truck. Like, it extends out quite a bit left and right and even to the rear a little bit. And it's so... And it really is impressive just how well the lunar lander actually fits in this truck. Like, it extends out a lot left and right. And it is... And I didn't really appreciate just how well the lunar lander fits in this truck, I think. Like, look, it does extend out a lot left. And I didn't really appreciate just how well the lunar lander fits in this truck. It extends out a lot left and right, but it looks like it actually holds. And I didn't really appreciate just how well the lunar lander fits in this truck. I mean, if you look at it, it almost looks like it was built for it to some extent, except for the fact that it overhangs way to the left and way to the right. And I didn't really appreciate just how well the lunar lander fits in this truck. It actually looks like it was made for it to some extent somehow. Except for the fact that it overhangs way to the left and way to the right. And are these scraping? No, we have just enough ground clearance to make sure it doesn't scrape as we drive along. And that is amazing. Unfortunately, though, we no longer need this truck. We're going to say, be gone to this truck. and we're going to have just the lunar lander here because we're going to do a little experiment. So say lunar lander, that means it was made for the moon gravity. That's what allows it to fly around so easily. Now we can actually fly and by it goes. We actually don't want to do that, so we'll bring it back. But what if it was a Jupiter lander? It would hold up fine. It would hold up perfectly fine. And, well, we can't really get much more gravity than that besides going straight to the sun. So we're just going to go slider it up slowly and see if anything happens. It is bending a little bit lower each time I move the slider. Eventually, it's got to snap sometime. Can't hold for that long. There it goes. One of the corners snapped over here. Is completely snapped. So we're going to just go all the way to the end and see if we can get all 4 corners to snap and if it'll still sit pretty flat or not. There goes another corner, and yeah, it sits nice and flat. This is now the solar lander. You could land on the sun with this, except it would melt. But aside from that fact, you could land on the sun with this. Anyways, that's going to do it for all of our testing at grid maps, so we're going to move on. The final map we're going to be using, which is going to be Leap of Death. And now we have the age-old question. How do we get a stationary object down Leap of Death? For this one, I have a good idea. We're going to make the object not stationary. So we put it to moon gravity and it should be able to just fly around, right? Let's find out. First, let me zoom out a little bit. There we go. And then max throttle going forward. Yeah, it worked. I was actually afraid it might get stuck in the rock a little bit. And kill the throttle. We're actually going to be flying a little bit overshooting the spot of Leap of Death I wanted to go. I want to make sure it actually hits the rocks a bit. So that's why I'm pushing it a little bit to the mountain. There we go. And it should just be able to roll down in moon gravity. Now, even though we're in moon gravity, it can get some speed going. It just happens a lot slower when you're in the moon gravity, which means also just Leap of Death in general is going to be a lot slower. It actually looks like it bounces upwards because gravity is so slow, versus normally it just kind of looks like it smashes into the ground, then it just keeps on going. And with moon gravity going, it shouldn't take that many collisions though, because it will bounce like that, and it can go such a large distance with so little speed thanks to the lack of gravity powers. Here we go for the next impact. And not bad. And I'm actually really surprised how well the camera's working in this situation. A lot of the time with these weird objects, when they start spinning out of control like this, the camera does the exact same thing. Here, it is staying placed perfectly. Like there's no jitter or anything. We can easily see what's happening as the lunar lander gets completely destroyed and then placed into the water gently. I said gently! That gentle. I don't know what causes that, where sometimes the water is just not water, and sometimes it is. It's really weird. So anyways, we're going to go ahead and go back to the top, and we're going to say, give me the regular Earth gravity. And this time we just got to drop it, because as I demonstrated earlier, in Earth gravity, this thing does not have enough power to fly on its own. And, oh, well, that's not exactly what I wanted. We'll move it a little bit, make sure it's not damaged yet. And then away it goes, and it is big. I mean, you saw how big it was when we compared it to the vehicles. It is a very big vehicle. So it is kind of hard to keep it all in frame without zooming out a little bit, which I could have done, but by the time I did that, we already lost half of it, and at that point, it does fit in the frame. And yes, it is just a fireball of death at the moment. That was to be expected. Anyways, that's going to do it for this video. Till next time, this is WhyBeAre, and remember, if you like or dislike this video, I will know. I can tell by counting the number of craters on the moon. So do the right thing, and I'll see you next time.